The Labor Department reports the United States economy added only 22,000 jobs last month, which is well below expectations. It is another worrying sign that the president's economic policies could be slowing our economic growth. In response, the president and his closest advisors are taking a new line. Just wait until next year. It's going to be great. All right, the nightcap is still here. Brendan, here's what I see from this report.
All right.
The president and the market are going to get what they want. We're going to cut rates. But we're not going to cut rates because inflation is under control. We're going to cut rates because the economy is slowing. That's not a good situation.
Yeah, and also we need to look at what's driving these numbers down, right? We're seeing a slow descent, but usually this is something that we get after a credit bubble. We didn't get that. There was no buildup. Right now, there are two things that are driving the American economy. It's investment in AI centers, data centers, and it's employment in healthcare. That's it. Healthcare is holding up the employment numbers. AI is holding up the business investment. If either of those things crater, there's nothing left holding up the whole structure. But usually what we're seeing now comes after like some exuberant buildup, some bubble that's got to be punctured. And it's hard to see the bubble in the American economy right now anywhere outside of AI data centers. And I think that's what's disturbing. What you're seeing right now is the slow grind, you and I talk about this all the time, of uncertainty. If you don't know what tariffs are going to be, if you don't know how tariffs are going to pass through to inflation, if you don't know how that's going to affect the job situation, if you don't know how immigrants affect your labor force, you can't invest.
Okay, but this is also why this is the best example of how the markets are different from the economy.
Yeah,
because if you're an investor, you could go all in investing in 7 companies associated with AI, and if you change your mind, you can sell 5 minutes from now. If you run a real business here, a big one or a small business, it's almost impossible to business plan because you have no idea what the regulations, what the tariffs, what anything is going to bring in the future. So you're not growing, you're not investing, you're not hiring. The president, who said, day one, we're lowering prices. Day one, there's going to be no regulation. There's going to be an M&A boom. It is going to be a bonanza. And now here we are. He actually said, just wait until next year. And he looked out at a table of tech leaders and said, when we're in your palaces of genius, that's where we're going to be next year. So he's just moving the goalposts.
And he's expanding the circle. Because having all those leaders kowtow to him was a really powerful moment for him, right? Yeah. It looked like an audition for The Apprentice.
It was a powerful show.
And they were all kissing his ass. And even someone like Bill Gates that you look to be strong, to be a voice of reason, to push back, I didn't see any of them push back. And I think that's the bigger issue, is that they're buying his shtick, and they're also echoing his shtick, which allows him to distort the truth, which is what he continues to do on national security. It's what he does in the economy. It's what he's going to do on Epstein. And that's been the real focus of their attacks in the last couple weeks, is the truth. They're bending the truth, and that's what's most dangerous.
They're not. I don't think they're buying his shtick. They're playing the game, but it has the same result, allowing him to bend the truth. When there was a time in our history not long ago when we would look to those business leaders to actually be leaders, yet none of them said one word about the fact that threatening the independence of the Federal Reserve could crater our market.
And there is somebody who's hiring. The military's hiring, and ICE is hiring, and there's going to be a lot of defense spending. So it's only a matter of time before those things merge. And we talk about the opportunity for AI around defense while we're simultaneously involved in forever war around the globe.
But this is also the impact, right, of the way that Trump has shown a willingness or an outright glee for dipping his hand into other institutions. So we're talking education, we're talking law firms, we're talking going after other people like John Bolton, who he has disagreed with or have criticized him. His willingness to go into cultural and educational institutions has shown that corporations need to think, how do I stay off his radar? And frankly, that's the conversation that I have with a lot of consultants in Washington, D.C. A lot of their clients are coming to them and saying, what's the best way for me to get done what I need to get done, but not be on the president's radar? I don't want to earn a tweet. I don't want to earn a truth. How do I do what I need to do? And that's what you're seeing when you see the Intel deal that was so strange, and that even Republicans.
I'm sorry,
like,
you mean
what?
a CEO who 1 week the president said should be fired because he was unqualified for the job, and a week later they cut a deal? Is that what you mean?
Correct. Yes. Right.
For 10% of the company.
Anything to stay off the radar.
And it's not just that these billionaire tech CEOs are playing into his shtick; it's that they're playing a part. Today, there was a hot mic moment with with Mark Zuckerberg from the end of that dinner, where he whispered to Trump that he was sorry he hadn't picked up on a sort of alley-oop that Trump had thrown him during the meeting, during the press portion of the meeting, because they had choreographed it. So it's more than just that they're willing to bend the knee. It's that they're willing to be actively complicit in what is very self-conscious and political
because
fear.
They're getting something they want, right? Think about what it's like, right? If AI is the new frontier, imagine you are forging into the great unknown and you have a president who says, how about no regulation? And that's what they're going, I mean, and that's Shangri-La for them.
And a president who has a group of people around the table who have all our data, right? So they're not only complicit and they're not only going along, they have our data. So what happens when Trump says, you know what, Mark Zuckerberg, I want all the data you've got on Chicago before I send in the National Guard.
And
those hard questions are going to come, and I'm not counting on too many guys at that table to hold the line.
And by the way, I mean, to the spin about the economic benefits coming in a year, the AI industry is looking a lot like a bubble right now. I mean, GPT-5 launched, what was it, like a month ago, and the reaction was overwhelmingly disappointment. It wasn't a lot better than GPT-4, whereas GPT-4, when it launched, 2 years ago, was dramatically better than GPT-3, so much better that it launched a lot of this AI hype in the first place. And so, if anything, I think there's a lot of risk to the market. There's a lot of downside, and it looks a lot like growth could be going in the wrong direction rather than the right one. But again, that's, of course, not so surprising because this is just spin.
So there's massive risk to the AI market that we have. But if you're going to say things are going to get better in a year, there has to be investment now, fixed business investment, new factories, new plants, new buildings. And outside of AI, that's not happening. So I don't know where this growth is going to come from in a year if nobody's laying down any cash right now to make sure that that growth is happening in a year. I also think that, 6 months ago, I thought, well, we're going to see a decline in the dollar. I came on this show and was terrified about it. I'm coming around now to realizing something I did not understand about the global economy, which is that the dollar right now, equities in America are benefiting from the where else are you going to go trade. There's nothing else to buy. There was going to be a pivot to Europe. There's nothing to buy in Europe. Those stock exchanges are tiny. There's no equity. There's nowhere to go.
We are too big to fail.
We are too big to fail. And so I think we keep thinking that maybe markets are going to be a corrective. They aren't. You can't sell. There's nothing else in the world to buy except dollar-denominated assets in America.
All right, let's talk about, we saw the administration's largest immigration raid at a work site this week. A Hyundai factory in Georgia on Thursday. Nearly 500 people were arrested. What does that tell you about the state of the American economy, our labor force, the whole picture?
I mean, I can tell you what it says about the politics of that specifically, though, too, right? Which is that this is the kind of optic that the administration needs to continue saying, okay, we have a reason to be having such an aggressive immigration stance.
Why? Tell me who of those 500 auto part workers were dangerous gang members? Or were they people putting together car parts in a part of the country where Americans weren't willing to take those jobs?
But there are plenty of MAGA supporters that I talk to and still meet who say, yeah, I recognize that maybe those aren't the people that he promised he would go after first, but didn't they commit an illegal act? Whether or not you think that that is fair, that is still the view that MAGA is riding on the immigration issue. And yet, I'll put an asterisk here, right? Because I do think that this is one of their key points of vulnerability when you layer the politics over it, which is that I do think that more people than those MAGA voters are saying, well, wait a second, these are not the people that I wanted you to go after. And we've seen story after story in the Times and other places about the people who said, I voted for Trump because I wanted them to crack down on illegal immigration, but not the woman who I've always known who's been part of my community. And I think that that's where...
And how about the amount of money our government is spending to organize all this?